Journey has been pretty fun. I was busy working doing the rods and replacing the rod bearings. I'll show you on there just how dirty some of the oil was and some of that, but it's been moving forward and I'm pretty happy about that. Stick around for the ride. You'll see what I did in order to get the gear back on. I show you how I pulled the gear off and some of the challenge I went. And now putting the new one on, I've learned a few tricks of the trade and I want to share those with you. And check that out, and also replacing all the rod bearings. It's not real interesting, but if you're a Beetle guy like me, you always like to look and see either how other people are being challenged by it or how other people are being successful by it. So stick around. We are putting the crank back together. You'll notice that I have the bearing on. And I have the little nub for the bearing closest to the flywheel, which is that side. You'll notice that little nub will actually sit right there. If you look at that, you will see that it is closer to the flywheel side. That's the flywheel side. And you'll notice that each one of the nubs where the main bearings sit are closer to the flywheel side. And so that's how we know when we're getting it on the right way. If you put it on the wrong way, you'll be pulling it all apart again. And right now, all I'm doing is I'm taking a little bit of emery cloth, just cleaning this up. I've got my torch, and I'll be heating up the gear. I cleaned up the gear so you can see those two dots, and those two dots have to face up when we put it back together again. But this has to be heated up. As you see, those two dots face up so that we can line it up easily with the cam gear. And the other thing is that I'm cleaning this up here with a little bit of emery cloth there, just so that I can get that looking a little bit better. Then I'll be heating this gear up with that torch right there and using a pair of gloves, heavy duty winter type mitts, to put it back together. Don't want to burn my hands. I haven't found my brass ring yet, but I'll be looking for that right away so I can do all these steps together. So let's get at her. So the big thing is that you don't want any burrs on that. You don't want any burrs on that whatsoever. And to pull this off, make sure I have absolutely no grit or grime in there at all. Another important thing is to make sure you always use paper towel when you're doing stuff like this. The lint from a cloth can plug up some of the pores, so make sure. And so again, always quadruple check. Yes, the dot is down. I already have oiled it, so I'll just drop this on. There it goes. And then I'm going to just put a little oil on. So I've got oil, a goodly amount of oil on that main bearing. Got that cleaned up. Physically check it, can't feel any burrs. All right, Now it's time to start heating this up. Okay, I've just put a little bolt in the vise just to get that in place and drop it on. I already know that this is the side that's going to be up. I've got the dots right there. And now I'm just going to heat it up. Now I see people heating this up with hot plates. I see people actually putting it in boiling oil and heating it up. And it'd be nice to have it right around 500 degrees. And I'm just going to sort of alternate back and forth. And you can see over here, while that's heating up, this is all prepared. I know that the keyway is facing straight that way, so I'll be sure to try to line that up as quickly as possible. And you really want to do this in one smooth motion. And I have my digital thermometer here. About 205 degrees. Like I said, we want to be, between 300 and 500 degrees. Okay, that's according to that, it's not quite where I want it. I'm starting to run out of butane, so I'm going to give this a shot and see what happens. Nope. It wasn't hot enough. I've moved the flame to be focused on the inside of that. We'll give that a few minutes to get good and hot. Here's the new brass bushing, or the brass gear for turning the distributor. And it's in a lot better shape. The old one, one's not in bad shape. Well, it's not in bad shape, it's in terrible shape. So that's kind of what happened to the old one. It got mangled pretty bad when we were pulling it apart. So I just, both of the ones I've done now, I'll just get a new one of these ready to plop on there, and it seems to work. The last time I did this, I actually put the crank in the freezer and froze the crank so it was really cold, and I got this quite hot, and that seemed to work really well. Well, we're going to give her the old college try. And it slid on there just as slick can be. And the important thing is those two dots are facing out. And a little bit of dust from my gloves, but we'll clean that up. So after just a very moderate amount of swearing and encouragement, the snap ring is now in place. You can see it's firmly seated. It's in all the way around. And it's looking good. It's marked up a wee little bit. I'll take a little bit of file and clean that up. It's amazing, this magnifies it so I can actually see some of the work that's happened now. So, and this is a new gear. That's the new gear. That's in. You can see, I can see the dots. So I can easily line that up with the cam gear and have that lined up properly. So next steps now, we're going to be putting on the connecting rods. And so I'm just doing a little reading and we'll have that done right away. I have the crank laying out now, and I'm just making sure that I have number 1 rod going in the right place. This is number 1 rod. And that little nub goes up and fits right in there. So I will be doing that. And I don't know if you can see, there's a little serial mark on there, and it matches a little serial mark on there. And we will slide these together. Now it's important to have that little groove towards the bottom, which is a mistake I just made. Okay, I've got my handy dandy torque wrench out. I've got it set for 25 pounds. And the final torque will be 36, but 25 is just to get it close. I'm gonna snug them up first. It's always a good sign when you let it go and it drops. Let it go. Move it up to 36. So once you have it torqued up to 36 pounds, the same thing as you let it go, it should drop freely. Which that one does. Yay! That's done correctly, so now we've got to go through and do the rest. Well, you saw me torque this one down, and so that went really well. So now we're going to go the next 3, and I'll probably just put you on fast forward, and then we're going to start looking at putting this crank back in the case. That'll be interesting. Just want to take a moment and show you guys something. You can see that. See how it's dark, light, and then dark. And that's a clear indication that the oil had gotten really, really dirty in there. And even it has a smell that is like a hot oil. But if you look at the journal, and I don't know if you can catch it in the light properly, but the journal itself looks all right. Now the reason that there is a not as dark in the middle is because this is where the oil comes out, And so it was pumping oils. That was the most lubricated spot. You can actually see the little wear marks on the journal a little bit there. And so, yeah, this crank could have been probably possibly polished, but I'm just not in the financial position to be worried about something like that. So it's going to be put together as is. Okay, we've successfully done all the rod bearings. You notice they all drop free, and that's a very good thing. So that's done. And so next stage is starting the reassembly. So we replace that main bearing, change that gear, or pull that gear off, put it back on. Replace that brass. We heated them all up and dropped them on. We got our C clamp back in, and of course we still have this that slides on, and that all goes into the case. So that's been the journey so far. I've been relatively happy with the progress that we've made. It has been slow. Man, oh man, I've had to spend way too much time doing office type stuff, which doesn't always make me happy. But I've been able to come out here, so I'm going to start preparing the case, prepping the case. And I have it basically all cleaned up. I've taken care of all the little things you should take care of on the case. The next step is to be replacing the cam bearings, replacing the lifter, setting the new cam in place. And there's supposed to be little things to hold the lifters into place, but I've just used a little bit of grease, and I just put a little bit of like axle grease, which is not going to hurt it, and that holds in. But I'll go through that process later on. The next thing I need to do is I'm going to need to do some pinging. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Pinging is when you take a little punch or a chisel. So I'll probably take this punch and I'll put it right there. What I'm trying to do is take and flatten that ring out. So I'll just set that down for a minute. Okay, so to be pinged, literally you're flattening that little ring on the inside of the nut, just into that little notch a little bit. And it really just stops, it's like mechanical Loctite, and make sure that those rod bearing nuts don't come off, because you don't want that to happen. So I'll be going through and doing that on the rest of these, and you don't need to watch do that, but that's the journey. Just a couple of comments. I had that, it's an infrared, it has a little infrared trigger to tell me the temperature, and again, it was really important to get it up to about between 350 and 500 degrees. And when I had it that warm, it just dropped on, just slick as slick can be. It's important that you get it on, and I should have probably almost had a little brass or a tack hammer just to tap it down to make sure it was good, well seated. When I put the brass one on, you notice I didn't get the video of the brass. When I put the brass on, it went on pretty slick, but when I put the clip ring or the snap ring back into place, I actually had to tap it down with a punch a little bit, a flattened punch, just to tap it down, get it into place. It wasn't that big a deal, but if I just slipped with that punch, I could have ruined a perfectly good brass gear, because brass is terribly soft. So that was I should have had a hammer, just tapped it down just to make sure I had really good seat on it. But apart from that, it went well. I'm glad you watched. Again, remember, subscribe and like. No, I am not going to make a living with YouTube. Not going to happen. But if you can, if you want to follow along my journey, I'll try to show you some of the tricks I've learned and some of the things I'm trying. So have yourself a good day. We'll talk soon. Bye now.